There is a pattern to life, a divine order, a sacred sequence. And when we follow that order, life flows. And when we reverse it, confuse it, or neglect it, life becomes chaos. There's a reason the ancient paths speak of a first things, because what you put first will shape everything that follows. You can't put second things in the place of first and expect peace. You can't chase the fruit and neglect the root. You can't build a house and ignore the foundation. So many are overwhelmed, not because their lives are full, but because their lives are out of order. Their days begin with noise instead of stillness, with screens instead of prayer, with pressure instead of purpose. But what if you live differently? What if you learn the power of putting the first thing first? When you seek purpose before popularity, peace before productivity, calling before comfort, you step into alignment with how you were designed to live. You stop striving and you start walking. You stop chasing shadows and start standing in light. Too many are running hard in the wrong direction. They're exhausted because they're climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. But when you return to the first things, the foundational things, you begin to walk in the rhythm of grace, not the pressure of this world. The first is not just about order, it's about importance. What you prioritize is what you worship, and what you worship is what you become like. If you give the first moments of your day to worry, worry will dominate your path. But if you give the first breath to gratitude, the rest of the day follows that path. Living a life of first things means waking up with intention. It means starting not with what the world demands, but with what your soul needs. It means protecting the sacred before surrendering to the urgent. It also means returning, because sometimes we've gotten off course, we've drifted. We've allowed the world to dictate what matters most. But the beautiful thing is that it's never too late to reorder your life. It's never too late to turn around. The first things are still waiting. They're still calling you back. Return to your first love. Return to the higher purpose. Let your decisions flow not from panic, but from peace. Let your words be guided not by reaction, but by wisdom. You were not created to live scattered, distracted, disoriented. You were made to walk in clarity, in focus, in power. A life of first things is a life of alignment. A life that sees clearly, that breathes deeply, that lives fully. It's not just about doing less. It's about doing what matters most. So today, stop and ask yourself, what's truly first in your life? And if it's not the right thing, you have the power to choose again. Because when you put the first things first, everything else finds its place. The order of your life determines the outcome of your life. Order is not just a matter of preference. It is a matter of principle. Everything in creation functions by a certain order. The sun rises and sets in a perfect rhythm. The tides follow the moon. The seasons know their time. Birds fly in formation. Trees blossom and bear fruit in sequence. When that order is honored, life flows. When it is broken, things fall apart. The same is true for your life. The outcome of your life is not determined solely by your dreams, your talent, or your effort. It is deeply tied to the order of your life. What you put first, what you allow to lead, and what you build your day, your choices, and your values around. You may have the right heart and even the right goals, but if the order is wrong, the results will not align with your purpose. Think about it this way. If you are baking a cake and you put the ingredients in the wrong order, mix the eggs after the flour, left out the baking soda until the end, you might still bake something, but it won't be what it was meant to be, and so it is with life. It's not just about having the right ingredients, it's about putting them in the right order. Many people are striving, pushing, burning out, and frustrated, not because they aren't capable, but because their lives are out of order. They are starting their day with chaos instead of clarity. They are running after tasks instead of purpose. They are giving their best to things that matter the least and giving what's left to things that matter the most. That kind of order will never bring peace, only pressure. When you shift the order, when you choose to begin with what's eternal before what's urgent, everything starts to fall into place. You don't live ruled by your to-do list, your inbox, or your calendar. You live rooted in meaning, your life gains traction, your steps carry weight. Your voice gains strength because you're no longer reacting to the world. You're living from a deeper source. The power of right order is also found in the ancient wisdom that says, seek first the kingdom. It doesn't say seek only. It doesn't mean you neglect everything else. It means you let the first thing direct all the other things. When your life is ordered rightly, even difficulties don't shake you. You may bend, but you won't break. You may face storms, but you won't be destroyed. Because your foundation is secure, your direction is clear. Your values are anchored, oriented. And here's the beauty. You don't have to have it all figured out to reorder your life. You just need to be honest. Ask yourself, what am I putting first? Is it fear? Is it pressure? Is it people's opinions? And calling. The great truth is, it's never too late to change the order. You may have lived years putting the wrong things first, but one decision, one day, one choice to reorder can begin to shift everything. The moment you say, I'm putting first things first, your life starts moving in a new direction. Order brings alignment, alignment brings clarity, clarity brings peace, and peace gives birth to power, but it all begins with order. So don't let your life be ruled by default. Don't let culture set your order. Don't let distraction set your priorities. Take back control. Live on purpose. Put the first things first, because the order of your life determines the outcome of your life. And when you honor the divine order, you don't just survive, you thrive. What you give priority to will shape your reality. You don't need to look far to understand the power of priorities. Every day you make decisions, what to focus on, what to delay, what to ignore. And whether you're aware of it or not, those choices are building the framework of your life. What you prioritize isn't just a to-do list. It's a declaration of what you believe matters most. Priorities aren't passive. They are active forces. When you give something your time, your energy, your thoughts, that thing begins to influence you. It starts to shape the way you think, how you feel, and ultimately what your life becomes. If your priorities are rooted in fear, your reality will be marked by anxiety. If your priorities are driven by status, you'll find yourself chasing validation instead of fulfillment. But if your priorities are anchored in purpose, your life will be steady, even when everything else feels unstable. There's a subtle but powerful truth here. You don't find time for what's important. You make time for what you've decided is important. That's why two people can live in the same world, face the same obstacles, and yet live very different lives. One chooses to prioritize growth, gratitude, and purpose. The other prioritizes complaints, convenience, and distractions. Their outcomes will never be the same. Your future is hidden in your priorities. Show me how you spend your mornings, your downtime, your energy, and I'll show you the direction your life is heading. If you prioritize scrolling instead of reflection, comparison instead of creation, reaction instead of intention, don't be surprised if your days feel scattered and your dreams delayed. But here's the empowering truth. Your priorities are not fixed. They are not set in stone. They are a choice, your choice. And with one decision, one shift in focus, everything can begin to change. You can choose to stop reacting to every distraction and start responding to your destiny. You can choose to stop giving your best energy to things that drain you and start giving it to things that grow you. There's a reason successful, grounded, fulfilled people often seem so focused. They've learned the power of priority. They don't try to do everything. They do the right things. They say no to the noise so they can say yes to their calling. They protect their mornings, guard their peace, and stay aligned with their purpose. And let's be clear, this isn't about perfection. Life is messy. Disruptions happen. But when you've set the right priorities, you have a compass. You don't get lost in every storm because you know what matters most. Even when you drift, your values pull you back on course. Maybe you've been feeling overwhelmed. Maybe your life feels out of sync. It might not be because you're doing too much. It might be because you're not doing enough of the right things. Your soul knows when something's off. That's why you can be busy and still feel empty, productive and still feel restless. It's a sign that something deeper needs to be realigned. So ask yourself today, what am I really prioritizing? What am I giving the best of myself to? And does it reflect the kind of life I want to build? The good news is, you don't have to wait until next year, next month, or even next week to make a shift. You can start right now. Recommit to your core values. Recenter your day around what matters. Reorder your life in a way that reflects the person you're called to be. Because your reality is not just happening to you. It's being shaped by you. One choice at a time. One priority at a time. One priority at a time. And when you align your priorities with your higher purpose, you don't just change your schedule, you change your story. The first things bring clarity and chaos. In a world that constantly pulls us in every direction, news cycles that never stop, obligations that never end, and distractions that fight for our attention. It's easy to lose sight of what matters most. Chaos isn't just noise on the outside, it becomes confusion on the inside. You start questioning your path, your value, your purpose. But there's a powerful truth. Clarity is not found in doing more. It's found in returning to the first things. First things aren't about being busy. They're about being centered. They are the foundational values, beliefs, and disciplines that ground your life. They're the non-negotiables that remind you who you are and why you're here. When everything else feels uncertain, the first things remain steady. They are like anchors in the storm. You've probably experienced moments where the chaos of life tried to consume you. The pressure of deadlines, the weight of relationships, the struggle with uncertainty. And in those moments, you may have felt overwhelmed. Not because you didn't have strength, but because you were pulled away from the source of your strength. That's what chaos does. It distracts, disorients, and disconnects. But when you come back to the first things, you come back to clarity. Clarity is not the absence of trouble. It's the presence of focus. It's the ability to look past the noise and see what truly matters. And the first things are what give you that focus. They quiet the distractions, simplify your decisions, and realign your steps. Maybe your first thing is your purpose, the reason you get up in the morning. Maybe it's your integrity, choosing what's right over what's easy. Maybe it's your faith, your family, your mission, or your calling. Whatever it is, when you keep it first, everything else falls into place. Not perfectly, but peacefully. Not without resistance, but with direction. When the world tells you to hustle harder, the first things tell you to return deeper. When the culture says you have to have it all figured out, the first things remind you that peace comes not from knowing everything, but from being grounded in something. When others are racing to the next big thing, the first things teach you to be faithful in the small things. That's the paradox of clarity. It often shows up in the quiet. It's not always loud or dramatic. It may come in the stillness of early morning, the pages of a journal, the silence of reflection, or a whispered prayer. But when you lean into those sacred spaces, you'll find that chaos begins to lose its grip. You don't need a perfect plan to move forward. You need a clear heart. And that clarity comes not from doing more, but from remembering what comes first. If life feels chaotic today, don't panic. Don't assume you're failing. Don't rush to fix everything at once. Just pause, breathe. Come back to the first things. Ask yourself, what do I know to be true, even in this storm? Hold on to that, speak it. Stand on it, let it guide you forward. Because in the midst of all the noise, clarity is still possible. Peace is still available. And direction is still waiting. Not because the chaos disappears, but because you've learned to focus on what never changes, even when everything else does. Let the first things become your compass. Let them recalibrate your vision. And as you do, you'll find that clarity isn't something you chase. It's something you uncover when you put first things first. And with clarity comes courage. With clarity comes confidence. And with clarity comes the power to rise above the chaos and walk in the peace and purpose you were made for. The first things bring clarity and chaos. In a world that constantly pulls us in every direction, news cycles that never stop, obligations that never end, and distractions that fight for our attention, it's easy to lose sight of what matters most. Chaos isn't just noise on the outside, it becomes confusion on the inside. You start questioning your path, your value, your purpose. But there's a powerful truth. Clarity is not found in doing more. It's found in returning to the first things. First things aren't about being busy. They're about being centered. They are the foundational values, beliefs, and disciplines that ground your life. They're the non-negotiables that remind you who you are and why you're here. When everything else feels uncertain, the first things remain steady. They're like anchors in the storm. You've probably experienced moments where the chaos of life tried to consume you. The pressure of deadlines, the weight of relationships, the struggle with uncertainty. And in those moments, you may have felt overwhelmed. Not because you didn't have strength, but because you were pulled away from the source of your strength. That's what chaos does. It distracts, disorients, and disconnects. But when you come back to the first things, you come back to clarity. Clarity is not the absence of trouble. It's the presence of focus. It's the ability to look past the noise and see what truly matters. And the first things are what give you that focus. They quiet the distractions, simplify your decisions, and realign your steps. Maybe your first thing is your purpose, the reason you get up in the morning. Maybe it's your integrity, choosing what's right over what's easy. Maybe it's your faith, your family, your mission, or your calling. Whatever it is, when you keep it first, everything else falls into place. Not perfectly, but peacefully. Not without resistance, but with direction. When the world tells you to hustle harder, the first things tell you to return deep. When the culture says you have to have it all figured out, the first things remind you that peace comes not from knowing everything, but from being grounded in something. When others are racing to the next big thing, the first things teach you to be faithful in the small things. That's the paradox of clarity. It often shows up in the quiet. It's not always loud or dramatic. It may come in the stillness of early morning, the pages of a journal, the silence of reflection, or a whispered prayer. But when you lean into those sacred spaces, you'll find that chaos begins to lose its grip. You don't need a perfect plan to move forward. You need a clear heart. And that clarity comes not from doing more, but from remembering what comes first. If life feels chaotic today, don't panic. Don't assume you're failing. Don't rush to fix everything at once. Just pause. Breathe. Come back to the first things. Ask yourself, what do I know to be true, even in this storm? Hold on to that. Speak it. Stand on it. Let it guide you forward. Because in the midst of all the noise, clarity is still possible. Peace is still available. And direction is still waiting. Not because the chaos disappears, but because you've learned to focus on what never changes, even when everything else does. Let the first things become your compass. Let them recalibrate your vision. And as you do, you'll find that clarity isn't something you chase. It's something you uncover when you put first things first. And with clarity comes courage. With clarity comes confidence. And with clarity comes the power to rise above the chaos and walk in the peace and purpose you were made for. When the first things are first, everything else finds its place. There's a divine order to life, a sacred alignment that brings peace, power, and purpose when we step into it. But the secret to that alignment isn't found in doing more, running faster, or chasing after everything. It's found in placing the first things in their rightful place. We live in a world that shouts for our attention. Career goals, family responsibilities, social obligations, endless notifications, all of these things can be good, even necessary. But when we start prioritizing the urgent over the important, the temporary over the eternal, we begin to drift. We lose balance. We grow weary, anxious, disoriented. Why? Because we've reversed the order. We've taken what should be first and placed it second, third, or last. But when you make the first things first, something shifts. Life begins to align. What once felt out of sync begins to harmonize. What was once overwhelming becomes manageable. Not because the load got lighter, but because your priorities got stronger. You see, the first things are the foundation. And when the foundation is secure, you can build with confidence. That's why when your values come first, your choices become clearer. When your faith comes first, your fears start to fade. When your purpose comes first, your distractions lose their grip. Everything else, your work, your dreams, your relationships, begins to fall into place around that center. It's not about perfection. It's about position. You might still face storms. You might still deal with uncertainty. But now you're rooted. You're anchored. You're no longer being tossed by every wave because you've placed the immovable first. Maybe for you, the first thing is truth. Living with integrity no matter the cost. Maybe it's love. Choosing forgiveness over resentment. Maybe it's calling, saying yes to the assignment you were created for. Whatever it is, when you put it first, the rest of your life starts to reflect that choice. It's like a puzzle. If you start with the border, the structure takes shape. If you try to force random pieces into the middle without that foundation, it becomes frustrating. That's how life feels when the first things are missing, disjointed, pressured, confused. But once you return to what matters most, things begin to fit again. Not instantly, not without effort, but with grace and clarity. And here's the beauty. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need to solve everything today. Just begin by placing the first thing in its rightful place. Make time for what nourishes your soul. Create space for what brings you peace. Protect the sacred over the shallow. And as you do, you'll notice a shift. Not just around you, but within you. You'll stop striving for control and start walking in alignment. You'll stop reacting to every pressure and start responding with purpose. Because now, your life isn't built on scattered priorities. It's built on something solid, something sacred. When the first things are first, you become steady. And from that place of steadiness, you'll begin to walk in wisdom. You'll lead with strength. You'll love with depth. You'll serve with joy. And you'll find that what once felt impossible now becomes a path you can walk step by step. So if life feels cluttered, if your days feel out of rhythm, don't despair. You don't need a major overhaul. You just need to come back to the order. Come back to the core. Start with the first things. Honor them. Protect them. Live by them. Because when the first things are truly first, everything else, every need, every detail, every decision will find its rightful place. And you'll find yourself not just surviving life, but stepping into the fullness of it. First things give birth to everything else that matters. There's a divine principle woven into the very fabric of creation. Beginnings matter. The seed determines the fruit. The root gives rise to the tree. The foundation shapes the building. What comes first has the power to shape everything that comes after. When we talk about living a life of a first things, it's not about rules or routines. It's about cause and effect, about sowing and reaping. The first in your life is the seed. It's the thing that gives birth to everything else. And the truth is, we are always planning something. The question is, what are you planning first? If the first thing you plan in your day is stress, anxiety, or worry, then the rest of your day tends to grow from that soil. But if the first thing you plant is peace, stillness, truth, then you reap from that place. What you put first becomes the fountainhead from which every stream flows. That's why the beginning holds so much power. Think about the way nature works. A single acorn becomes a forest. A single spark starts a fire. A single thought births a destiny. But the power isn't just in the size, it's in the order. A seed planted at the wrong time, in the wrong soil out of season, it withers. But the right seed planted first, nourished consistently, becomes unstoppable. So many people are chasing fruit without tending to the root. They want the harvest but ignore the seed. They want peace but feed on noise. They want purpose but pursue distraction. They want strength but ignore the source. That's why life feels empty sometimes. Not because the fruit is wrong, but because the first things are missing. The first thing is what you give your heart to, what you wake up thinking about, what you organize your life around. And it has power, creative power. Because what you place first doesn't just take up space, it sets direction. It gives birth. It multiplies. If your first thing is love, watch how compassion flows through your relationships. If your first thing is faith, watch how fear loses its grip. If your first thing is purpose, watch how confusion fades. That's the secret. You don't have to chase after 100 different things. You just need to guard the first one. Nurture it, keep it sacred, because from that one seed, everything else will grow. But this isn't always easy. There are distractions. There are demands. The world will try to convince you that everything is urgent, that everything must come first. But the truth is, not everything deserves to be first. Not every voice deserves to speak into your beginning. Not every task deserves your heart. You have to choose. You have to decide. What is the seed I'm planting today? What is the truth I'm starting from? What is the source I'm drinking from? Because once that's decided, once the first thing is in place, the rest becomes clearer. And here's the miracle. The smallest shift in what you put first can create a ripple effect through your entire life. A moment of stillness before the storm. A word of truth before the chaos. A step of faith before the uncertainty. It changes the soil. It changes the harvest. It changes the life that grows from it. So don't underestimate the power of the beginning. Don't ignore the sacred weight of the first thing. It's not small. It's not optional. It's not negotiable. It's the seed from which your future grows. Guard it. Protect it. Choose it wisely. Because when the first thing is truly first, it gives birth to everything else that matters. And your life, your work, your relationships, your journey will no longer be scattered or striving. It will be fruitful, aligned, overflowing. And that's the secret to the life you were meant to live. It starts with one thing, one choice, one first step. Plant the right seed and watch the harvest unfold. When you return to first things, everything else falls into place. There's something sacred about returning. In the ancient paths, the people who had wandered away were always called back to the source, to the foundation, to the first love, the first altar, the first word. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was power. Because the first things were never just about order, they were about alignment. When the first things were restored, everything else began to fall into place. Sometimes in life, we drift, not because we are wicked or weak, but because we are human. The distractions are loud, the demands are many, and the course can feel long. And in the drifting, we lose sight of what we once knew, of what really matters. The things we once prioritized get buried under deadlines and devices, noise and numbers. But the call has always been the same. Return to the first things. Return to the stillness, the clarity, the values that once anchored you. Return to the morning where you used to pause, to the word that once lit your path. Return to the dream that stirred your soul, the purpose that gave you breath. Because when you return, you don't just find yourself, you find alignment. You find strength. There's something beautiful about order, and not the order of control, but the order of truth. When your life is in the right order, peace flows like a river. When the heart is in the right place, the storm loses its power. When you return to first things, you return to the source of all things. And in that alignment, burdens lift, chaos clears, and the scattered pieces begin to make sense. First things were never meant to be optional.
They are foundational. In a building, you don't start with the roof. You start with the cornerstone. In a journey, you don't begin in the middle. You begin at the starting line. And yet, so often, we chase outcomes without roots, success without substance, results without return.
But without the foundation, it all crumbles. The good news is, it's never too late to return. That's the miracle. You can be miles off course, years down the wrong road, and still with one decision, with one moment of clarity, you can come back to what matters, back to what lasts. And when you do, you'll find that what was missing wasn't unreachable. It was simply misplaced. The human heart longs for alignment, whether we realize it or not. We are not built to be divided, fragmented, pulled in 1,000 directions. We are created to live in rhythm, with truth, with purpose, with our Creator. And the rhythm always begins with the first thing. Maybe today is your moment to return, not to the past, but to the root. To the beginning that never stopped calling your name, to the order that brings peace, to the foundation that holds you through the storm. You don't need to fix everything at once. You just need to return to what matters most. When the first thing is restored, the second thing stops trying to be first. When the root is healthy, the fruit follows. When the heart is aligned, the rest of life begins to find its way. Not overnight, not without effort, but with peace, with clarity, with power. So let this be your turning point. Not a new religion or a new rule, but a return to the beginning, the sacred place where your soul finds home, where purpose is not an achievement but a flame, where peace is not earned but received, where the scattered find center and the weary finds rest. Return to the first things and watch how everything else begins to fall into place. Would you like the entire How to Live a Life of First Things speech assembled into one document?